Welcome to the first of many advanced combat guides for all playable characters in the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth game. We're going to be taking a look at Cloud, the main protagonist of this game, whose combat is the most diverse, allowing him to pull through in any situations. But before we get started, just know that I'll be talking about all of his available weapons in the game, so if you don't want to spoil them for yourself, I'll be leaving chapters for you to skip around to see what you want to look at. Just know that these videos take a very long time to make, so if you can show your appreciation by subscribing, that would be great. However, this video, we're talking about the following: his basic attacks and combos, his unique ability, all of his weapon abilities with locations and where to find them, synergy skills and abilities with all party members, and his 3 limit breaks. At the very end of the video, I'll be doing some advanced mechanics you can implement into your game, which have really helped me throughout the course of my playthrough, so definitely stick around to see what those are. But without further ado, let's get started with his basic combat. When playing as Cloud, you can press square to perform a basic attack. Pressing this 5 times consecutively will allow him to perform a combo. However, at the end of this, there is a short cooldown before you can take any other action. If you hold down the attack button, Cloud will do a spinning slash capable of damaging all nearby enemies, as well as rounding smaller enemies into a small area. Doing this will make them very vulnerable to a strong ability that deals AoE damage, as it will be able to hit all enemies within its proximity. A new feature of this game that's different to Remake is the ability to launch blade beams towards the enemy. This is done by first dodging with circle and then pressing the attack button right after. This can be chained 4 times and each blade beam will stick to the enemy, dealing even more damage once you are done attacking. Another move you can do is dash towards your target. To do this, you must first dodge and then hold down the attack button. This will dash Cloud towards your target even if they are in the air, which will allow you to chain attack onto the airborne enemies. While in the air, your basic combo becomes a chain of 3, and on the 3rd slash will throw light enemies onto the ground. Doing 2 attacks, dodging away, then dashing back to them will allow you to juggle the enemy in the air, which can be a safe way to pick off large hordes of enemies one by one. You can also block incoming damage by holding R1, which will halve the damage received. However, this kind of block will only defend against normal attacks. If the enemy's attack shows the bind sign, symbolised by the warning symbol, this will prevent further actions until the enemy has completed the entire attack, so definitely be on the lookout to see what attacks your opponent is doing. Pressing R1 right before an attack lands will allow you to completely negate all damage coming your way, however this is easily said than done. When doing a perfect block, you will also raise your limit gauge and their stagger gauge slightly, so mastering enemy movesets could make the difference between life or death in more difficult encounters. Let's move on to his unique ability now, which is a core component to punishing opponents that attack you. This is triggered by pressing triangle and puts you into Punisher mode. You'll notice that the attack command has now swapped into strong attack. This deals significantly more damage and can be mashed consistently to do a chain attack. This can stun many small enemies while you bombard them with powerful hits, so using this can really rack up the damage you deal. Similar to Cloud's operator mode, Punisher mode also has an attack where holding down square. This will drive Cloud's sword down into the opponent and flip the Berserk status effect onto Cloud. This increases all damage dealt by 30%, however it does also increase damage received by 30% too, so using this at the right time is crucial to a successful battle. If you hold R1 while in this mode, you will move significantly slower, however if the enemy attacks you with a regular attack, it can be countered automatically. If you press R1 with perfect timing, you will receive immunity from the attack, and also follow up with your counter. The same can be done if you enter Punisher mode with triangle in perfect timing. This can really punish enemies and sometimes even pressure them depending on the thing you're fighting. You can leave Punisher stance in 2 ways. You can either dodge with circle, which allows you to follow up with your blade beam attacks or dash towards the enemy, or you can press triangle, which does an automatic slash with your sword, being the first attack of your 5 attack combo chain in operator mode. Note that your Punisher mode combo can actually be extended if you use a weapon skill materia called Unrelenting Punisher, so this can really help when fighting smaller enemies that can be stunned during this chain. I'm next going to be talking about his weapon abilities, as well as the weapon that they are obtained from. I'll also let you know which chapter each of these is from so you know where to find it for yourself. When entering the game, you have access to 3 weapon abilities already, as these are from the Buster Sword. The first ability is called Braver, a heavy hitting attack costing 180B and can be used both on the ground or while airborne. If used in the air, the damage will scale with how far down you have travelled before the attack connects with its target. Note that this ability can hit all nearby enemies within the close proximity, so it is great to use after operating mode's roundup attack by holding square. His next ability is Focus Thrust, which costs 180B to use and its main purpose is to increase the enemy's stagger gauge. When the enemy is pressured, using focus thrust will increase stagger significantly, which can allow you and your party to deal even more damage without the worry of receiving any. The final ability from the Buster Sword is Triple Slash. This also costs 1 ATB and can strike a single target 3 times, or if there are multiple on the field, Cloud will dash towards each of them for a total of 3 strikes. This ability can be used on the ground and in the air, and while using this on the ground, it can even dash you towards an aerial enemy to chain your attacks in the sky. His next ability is from the Sleek Saber. This weapon can be found in Chapter 2 of the game. You can find it by the abandoned dock, as soon as you leave the town and follow the main mission. The ability is called Firebolt Blade, and is an elemental attack dealing both lightning and fire damage to the enemy. This costs 1 ATB to use, and can be used both in the air and on the ground. This ability can also lift small enemies into the air, allowing you to chain your attacks together to defeat them away from the other opponents. Within Chapter 4, you can find the Rune Blade, which can be found in a purple chest right after the parade section of Upper Junon. This gives you access to the weapon ability Disorder, a move costing 1 ATB with the purpose to deliver a strong attack and swap between Operator and Punisher mode. This can be used on the ground and while airborne. If the attack connects, you will also gain ATB back to use on other commands, which is a big plus. During the animation and swapping from Operator to Punisher mode, you will counter the attack just like you would if swapping with the triangle button with perfect timing. If you use Disorder and are currently in Operator mode, Cloud will dash towards the target and strike the enemy. If you're in Punisher mode and use the ability, Cloud will spiral into the air, lifting smaller enemies up with him too. If you use Disorder while in the air, Cloud will spin around with his sword, dealing damage to nearby enemies, as well as keeping them above the ground to chain even more attacks together. Cloud's next weapon can be found at the end of Chapter 8 when entering the Dust Bowl, right after the Gold Saucer sequence. This weapon is the Umbral Blade, which gives you access to Prime mode. This costs 1 ATB to activate and swaps Cloud into Punisher mode, that's now called Prime mode, as well as landing an attack on the enemy. Cloud's attacks while in Prime mode will deal more damage to the target, as well as extending the Berserk status's potency. When holding down square, Cloud will do 4 consecutive heavy hitting strikes into the ground, damaging enemies in a small radius. This ability can last quite a while, so spending that single ATB to do a lot more damage makes this a very worthy investment. Cloud unlocks his next weapon in Chapter 9 while in the Gungaga reactor. This is called Crystal Blade and gives access to the infamous Infinity's End. This move costs 2 ATB and hits all nearby enemies with a powerful strike to the ground. Be careful when using this ability however, as it has a long animation before the attack happens, so make sure you use this without making yourself very vulnerable. For guidance, most enemies' stagger is usually just a little longer than Infinity's End animation, allowing you to get that hit in with an extra 60% of damage. Cloud's next sword, the Igneous Saber, can be unlocked in Chapter 11 when climbing Mount Nibble. This has the weapon ability Blade Burst, a magical attack that can hit multiple enemies in a cone shape in front of Cloud from the fire beams that it creates. This is a 1 ATB attack, but be careful as it can only hit grounded enemies, as it cannot reach anything too far in the air. With this being a magic attack, raising your magic stat will help this ability do even more damage, so just build Cloud to your desire to see if this ability fits you. The final weapon is found in Chapter 13 and is named the Slipstream Saber. This is Cloud's only defensive ability and it's named Counter Stance. If you remember from Remake, this ability has not changed, allowing you to counter all kinds of damage, but excluding binding attacks. This means that physical, magic or ranged attacks can all be countered with this ability. This move does cost 1 ATB however, but it's the only option to countering while airborne, as Punisher mode doesn't let you counter unless touching the ground. And the synergy skill Counter Fire also cannot be used while in mid-air. With it being able to counter most types of damage, this can be a good way to learn enemy moves to counter them in the future by using either Punisher mode or Counter Fire in their respective ways. Cloud also has an ability in his folios once you reach party level 8, and this unlocks Aerial Onslaught. This can only be used while mid-air and costs 1 ATB to use. This can lock onto a target and deal many slashes onto them, finishing with a strike to the ground that damages all enemies in a close proximity. This can deal huge damage, and if the enemy is small enough, it will completely stun them, making them very vulnerable to every attack. As I said earlier, Cloud has a defensive synergy skill that costs no ATB or MP to use and can be used no matter who is in your party, and it is the only defensive skill which is Counter Fire. This can counter magic or range attacks and essentially throws back the attack to its initial sender. This can be great against some enemies, especially ones that only ever use magic attacks. The good thing about this skill too is that incoming damage will be negated, unlike Punisher mode which only does half damage before you do the counter. This makes it a great way to defend yourself, however you do have to have at least one party member with you to be able to use it. If you were solo with Cloud, your next best option would be use a counter stance ability from the Slipstream Saber. Cloud's first offensive skill is Power Blade. This is usable with Tifa and Kate Sith, and to use it properly you must hold down R1 until the animation stops developing. Once this is done, Cloud will do a physical attack, dealing massive damage towards the enemy. Similarly, Cloud can also use Spell Blade, which is the magic form of the attack. If Aerith or Yuffie is in the party, that's when this can become usable. When striking the ground with it, it will send a short beam toward the target that can damage all opponents that get hit by it. Cloud's next two skills are ranged attacks, so if Barret is in the party, we can use Bullet Batter, and this is the physical attack version. If you're in operator mode, you can use the skill 3 times in a row, however if you're in Punisher mode, it can be used only 1 time. If Red 13 is in the party, this will be a magical attack instead, and the same concept of operator and Punisher mode still applies. Both these skills can be used in mid-air as well, allowing you to chain together your aerial combos in style. Let's now talk about your synergy abilities and how they can benefit you in battle. With Barret, we have Partners in Pain, which raises both of their limit levels by 1. With Tifa, we have Relentless Rush, which increases the stagger duration by a small amount, but also deals more damage while the enemy is staggered. We also have Senko Cyclone, which gives both characters unlimited MP for a short time. With Aerith, we have Firework Blade, which is a ranged attack dealing magic damage. This also raises both characters' limit levels. With Red, we have Savage Assault, which raises the character's limit levels. With Yuffie, we have Maelstrom Strike, which increases limit levels for both characters. We also have Heiklund Descent, which deals more damage during stagger, as well as increasing the stagger duration. With Kate, we have Curiosity's End, which gives both characters unlimited MP for a short time. And finally, Soldier Moogle class, which can be used with Kate to raise both characters' limit levels. With Barret, Aerith and Red, we can also use United Refocus, which splits our ATB gauge into 3, allowing us to charge 50% more ATB in the same amount of time. This does cost 4 ATB charges however, but can be pretty useful in some situations. Finally, we're going to be talking about Cloud's limit breaks. He starts off battle with a limit level of 1, which gives him access to Cross Slash. This damages a single opponent, dealing massive damage to them, making it a great way to cut down the enemy's health, especially when staggered. If you use a synergy ability that raises limit levels, you now have access to Ascension. This targets a single enemy, dealing massive damage, however if the enemy is currently pressured it will deal significant stagger as well, allowing you to make the opponent vulnerable to you and your party. If you're able to get off another limit level increase ability, you'll be able to use Finishing Touch, however you must have unlocked this in your folios once you've reached party level 8. This is definitely worth it as you can deal huge stagger damage to all your opponents in the area, as well as damaging them all significantly. This is his best limit by far, but requires you to have used at least 8 ATB with the Cloud and another person to be able to use enough synergy abilities to get the appropriate limit level. Well, that's all of Cloud's attacks out of the way, however I did mention that I'd like to talk about his advanced mechanics that you can use to get an edge in battle. When dodging, you can press triangle, then another dodge to skip an animation which allows you to evade even quicker. This doesn't work only in battles though. This can also work in minigames such as the Gold Rush in the Dust Bowl. This can help save so much time and makes it so much easier. Using this in battle however can allow you to dodge very difficult binding attack which could save you from dying. This can also be used while in mid-air, allowing you to stay airborne during attacks that can only hit you while standing on the ground. Cloud is able to juggle small enemies in the air with some very basic abilities, and adding this to your command shortcuts can make even the easiest battles feel so smooth to play. When Cloud is airborne, he can use the Wind Current ability, which essentially brings the opponent back up to you. Once you defeat the enemy, Wind Current another enemy to pick them off individually without the risk of taking any other damage. Another thing you can do is when using the enemy skill materia, you can use Plasma Discharge. It causes an electrical explosion, dealing lightning elemental damage to any target in a close proximity to Cloud. The best thing about this is that you will explode every time you get an ATB, and as we've learnt from the weapon abilities earlier, Disorder can refund ATB. If you spam Disorder with Plasma Discharge active, you can consistently explode, dealing huge damage and stagger to an enemy. Just make sure that an enemy isn't immune or absorbs lightning, as there is no way for you to take off Plasma Discharge once it's used. You must wait it out for it to deactivate on its own. But that's it for Cloud's combat. This has been very in-depth, and I hope you found it useful to slash your way through the game. The next guide will be all about Yuffie, so make sure to subscribe with notifications on to see how you can master her ninja star. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.